The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue 𝐤𝐞𝐫𝐯. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great interview today. Prolific producer Nina Jacobson, along with showrunner Stuart Zicherman, their new limited series, American Sports Story, Aaron Hernandez, now airing on FX and streaming on Hulu. Sue Ballou, what are you doing?
I was this close to having a major heart attack today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because of the Mets, right?
Because of the Mets.
Now they made it. They got in.
They got in.
Was not easy.
I know. Well, that's the Mets.
Yeah, that is the Mets.
That's the story of the Mets. You know,
so
they come up like one game shy of getting in.
Yeah,
you know?
But now they're in. They
I
could play the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs if they advance out of the wild card round.
Right. Now, who do you think is a better match for them to win? The Brewers, although they beat the Brewers the last game,
yes, or
the Padres?
I would not want to play the Padres.
Yeah,
I have said if the Dodgers don't go to the World Series from the National League, I think it'll be the Padres.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make you feel bad, but the Mets are the draw that I want for the Dodgers. One, because it's fun, New York, LA. Two,
yeah,
I'd rather not play the Braves or the Padres.
Sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So you know what I did today?
What did you do today?
I went to Lakers Media Day and sat down with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and everybody from the Lakers. It was fantastic. And I want to say this about LeBron. So I won't, this is podcast material. This is not show material. So I get kind of intimidated with LeBron. I mean, he's LeBron James. You know what I'm saying?
But have you interviewed him before?
Lots of times, but he's still LeBron James. Like, I was always that way with Kobe, too. I was like, Kobe Bryant. It's just like, you know, gigantic worldwide star. He could not have been cooler, could not have been better. That's the thing nobody will say about LeBron James, or you don't hear very often. He's just a good guy, just through and through. And he said the lesson that he wants to teach his son, Bronny, more than anything else is work ethic and to be kind. And I was like, that's a really nice message.
Great lesson.
So yesterday, or this week, this is coming out on a Thursday, but this week was Starbucks, International Starbucks Day.
Yep.
Now, Sue, I spend a fair amount of money at Starbucks. And I went through and I did the math. Looks to me like about $125 a week I spend at Starbucks. Yeah. Every morning I get my bacon Gouda sandwich. That's my breakfast. Then I get 2 quad espressos, light ice, nothing in it. And I get a passion tea, like a herbal tea to drink the rest of the day. But the coffee is the most important part because if I'm not on coffee, I'm just not good on the air. I need coffee. So I chug those quad espressos. I do not like the taste of coffee. Sorry, Starbucks. I don't like, if I could avoid it, I would. I never drink coffee on an off day, but that coffee is like my jet fuel to be able to do a show.
Do you want to know how much money I spend on Starbucks a week?
I'm guessing probably zip.
I don't like their coffee.
They have terrible coffee. From what I understand, they burn their beans.
They burn, the coffee's burnt.
Yeah.
And I drink decaf. Their decaf is really weak.
Oh, it is? Yeah. See, for me, it's 25 steps from my office. So Starbucks is definitely where I'm going to grab my stuff. But yeah, no, coffee, it's not healthy. I talked to, I told Bryan Cranston once this, and he said, why don't you try not drinking coffee? I'm like, try not? I don't even think I exist on the air without coffee. There's one other one I wanted to hit. It's International Podcast Day this week.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out, we are on episode 339. Can you believe that? 339 episodes is there are lots of podcasts out there. Most of them, if you go to like iTunes or Spotify, most of them are abandoned because people think it's a great idea and then they do it for 6 episodes or 10 episodes or 21 episodes or whatever, and then it just falls away. We have stuck to it, Sue. Stuck to it.
I remember exactly where I was when you proposed the idea to do a podcast.
Where were we?
Well, you called me and I was in my backyard and I was gardening.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, we should do what we did on the radio years ago as a podcast.
Yeah.
And you were like, you in? And I said, absolutely. What took you so long to call me?
Yeah. And here we are. Like, is it 4 years?
It's
5
gotta
years,
be.
maybe?
Maybe 5. Maybe 5.
It might be 5 years. Yeah. So we're grinding here. And by the way, that means if you are listening or you're watching right now, we always appreciate you. Make sure to let me say it this way. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. You can give us a 5-star rating and a review. We love that. Always on YouTube, comments right down there. And anything you got is cool. Any reaction to the show, ideas for the show, all that kind of stuff. And definitely smash the like button and subscribe to the Culture Pop Podcast YouTube channel. So big movie coming out this weekend, Sue. I would call this the beginning of award season. Normally, the first Friday of October is when the first big-time prestige movie opens. And this time it is Joker, FOLIE Á DEUX. I believe I am saying that right now. Do you know the literal meaning of FOLIE Á DEUX?
Well, due is twice, right? It's
correct.
2?
It's madness between two.
Okay.
So it's a delusional or mental illness shared by 2 people. And there could not be a better title for this movie, given the fact that you got Arthur Fleck and now Harley Quinn, Lady Gaga playing Harley Quinn. There is going to be madness. There is going to be craziness. There is going to be music in this movie, Sue. I am excited for it. I wanted to point out the reviews are only 63%. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer. Then I went back and looked at the first Joker. The reviews were only 69%. So there are some people that just don't like this.
Don't like it. Yeah.
And to me, I'm in it for the adventure. I'm in it for the excitement. I'm in it for the creative spark that Todd Phillips brings to everything. And Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, sign me up.
Captain. How do you not see it with the 2 of them?
And, it made me think, Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is a psychopath.
Yes.
I was thinking about it last night. He's a psychopath. He's not just a villain. I mean, he literally is no moral compass whatsoever. So I went through and I kind of tried to figure out the most famous psychopaths from movies over the years. And thanks to Slant, which is a website, we got a pretty good list. I sent it to you. What did you think of the list of movie psychopaths?
I thought the list was good. There were some movies that I hadn't seen, so I wasn't familiar with some of their choices.
Yeah.
But the top ones that I agreed with was Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction.
Oh, I will not be ignored. Sure. Yeah.
Yes. Anthony Perkins in Psycho.
I mean, the original psychopath. He was a psychopath before it was cool.
That's true. You know what I love about this character, too?
What?
He ate candy. Like
I don't remember that, did he?
Oh, yeah. That's what he did. He ate candy. He didn't smoke cigarettes. He didn't have a vice that was, like, harmful to you,
Right.
But he ate candy, which is something that is kind of sweet. You know what I mean?
It's counter what he's actually doing in his secret life.
Yeah.
His secret life.
Michael Rooker in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Let me tell you something. That movie is fucking brutal. It really is.
Disturbing.
Because
so disturbing.
You know what bothers me? It bothers me the random killing. Like he's not Henry, Portrait of Serial. That character is not killing for a reason. He's just killing because he wants to. And it doesn't really matter who he kills. Like he has that scene where he wipes out an entire family. I'm like, it's the most disturbing thing in the world. And by the way, the other thing about that is never, the message from that movie is never stop and help a driver who is stranded on the side of the road, because that's the way Henry got some of his victims. He'd pretend he was stranded. Somebody come help him. Next thing you know, they're dead.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but years ago, I was living in Los Angeles on a street called Sherbourne, which was off of La Cienega.
Yeah.
And there was a 7-Eleven on La Cienega. So I was a couple of blocks from there.
Right.
And I took a nap, and I was going to go out and get a pack of cigarettes. And then I just decided not to go. And the next thing I know, there's gunshots in my neighborhood, right on my street, like further down, right around the corner, right around the corner from the 7-Eleven where I would have gone to get cigarettes. And it was a guy and his son, and they just randomly shot and killed people. So they killed, I think, 3 people.
Oh, God.
And that's exactly when I would have been there
Wow.
at that moment.
That's crazy.
And you would think I would quit smoking after that.
Yeah, you're right. Give up smoking. Well, you know, I read a lot about Richard Ramirez. There was a time in life when I was very fascinated by serial killers. And Richard Ramirez, who was the Night Stalker here in Los Angeles, the way he found victims was that he would pull into a residential neighborhood and he'd go up to the porch and turn the doorknob. And if it was locked, he wouldn't go in. It was just the first person that forgot to lock their door. That was the one he was going to go in and kill. So friggin' so I get a lot of that from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Killing just for the sake of killing.
Let me see the other ones.
Christian Bale in American Psycho. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Huey Lewis in the News and that first killing. I mean, just crazy.
Well, it's in the title, so.
Yeah, right. It is.
Jessica Walter in Play Misty for me was one of the classic psychopaths, kind of like predating Glenn Close.
Sure.
That's who I thought of when I saw Fatal Attraction.
Yeah.
It was a very similar story.
First movie Clint Eastwood directed was Play Misty for me.
Oh, God. It was so great.
Good. And you're right. She was so good. She had that voice, right? And
yes.
She had the little bit of rasp in her voice, and she'd make the request, and then so good. If you've never seen Play Misty for me, we're going back several years.
Oh, that's right, because he was a DJ.
He was a DJ, exactly. That's why the movie resonated with me, because you'd get a weird call, and as a disc jockey, you get a weird call in the middle of the night, and you just wonder. Well, she was a psycho.
Okay, so the last person on this, I mean, there's other people, but for me, Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
Everything about him. I mean, his hairdo, his haircut was psycho.
His name was Anton Chigurh. Chigurh. And that's another, this was like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. He would like flip a coin and about whether or not he was going to kill you. He was just a brutal, single-minded killer and very disturbing. And I also think very different for a Coen Brothers movie. I know this is one they won the Oscar for, but it's not a classic. I mean, it's a classic movie. It's just not a classic Coen Brothers movie, or it doesn't feel like a Coen Brothers movie. It's got a different vibe to it.
So there's some people that were not on the list that I think are worthy of being on the list. Kathy Bates in Misery.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal.
Well, she was on the Emmy. Did you see her on the Emmys?
Yes.
She said after Misery, I couldn't get a date for 30 years.
It's a great line.
Such a funny line.
So great.
I believe she's used that before.
Andrew Scott in Ripley.
Yeah, he was pretty much a psychopath. Lying, killing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is, did you ever see The Shrink Next Door?
No, I never did.
Paul Rudd.
Right.
Total psychopath. Someone
Really?
who you wouldn't expect to play that type of role.
Yeah,
so it was
not at
even
all.
creepier. There's a guy named Claes Bang who was in a show called Bad Sisters.
Klaus Bang.
Well, they say his name is Claes. That's how you pronounce it.
Oh, okay.
Claes, Claes Bang.
Okay.
He was total psychopath.
He's a great actor. He's
Oh,
a
God.
great actor.
He was so evil. And to be more current, I look at like Ramsay from Game of Thrones.
Ramsay's a great choice. He is the ultimate psychopath. The
Man.
ultimate psychopath. So you're still in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
There is much psychopathic behavior in Game of Thrones.
Yes, like Joffrey.
There is.
And even the sister, I forget her name.
Cersei?
Cersei.
Yeah.
She's psychopath. She's
Oh,
got
yeah,
psychopath, Yeah.
Oh, there's nonstop. I mean, anytime you get royalty, you get, I mean, in that world, you get psychopath behavior. The one that you didn't mention, and it ties into is Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if this is real or not, but Juan does not think this is a healthy performance. He says that the performance had something to do with the fact that he was using drugs during that period, and that was maybe how he got to where he got to. And I have no idea. It's just speculative. But I think it's a brilliant performance. I mean, you know, it's weird. Here's this role. I think we've talked about this, but Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, there's something about this role, this idea that there's a guy that comes along, an agent of chaos, right? Who just wants to turn the world upside down. For what reason? No reason at all. He just likes seeing it all burn. And I think that's what makes the Joker such a compelling character. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga do this Friday. There's one other thing I wanted to get to, and that is the Penguin. Now, did you get a chance to watch the first episode of the Penguin?
I did. Yep.
I love this show.
I do too. And, I'm trying to figure out what it was about Colin Farrell that they would choose him for this role, right? So I went online, and apparently Matt Reeves, who directed it, said that it was his empathy and ability to dig deep and understand his character. That's why he chose him. But I normally would never think that someone like Colin Farrell would be in this role. And it is such a testament to the makeup people, because
oh my God,
the makeup
is 50 pounds of makeup he's wearing.
It's incredible. And a lot of times when someone's made up to be so distorted, you can kind of see the strings,
Yes.
It is seamless.
Yeah. You know what I love about this is that it's so grounded in reality. Like, I tried to sell Juan on the show. He's like, I don't do Batman and super. It's like, no, there is no superhero here. And, the Penguin, you think about it, Burgess Meredith would waddle, right? Well, here they found a way for his real name is Oswald Cobblepot, which I would go by Penguin too. But the waddling is caused by the fact that he's got one leg in a gigantic brace. So it's grounded in reality. And this is really just a great mob kingpin kind of story. It doesn't matter. Batman it didn't have anything to do with Batman. This is its own story. And I love, here's this guy who is chip on his shoulder, underestimated his whole life, unattractive, unloved, unwanted, and he finds himself in seemingly like pickle after pickle after pickle. And that's really the show. And by the way, I never knew of this actress named Christina Milioti. She is mesmerizing.
Well, God, her eyes.
Her eyes. She's got like Anya Taylor-Joy eyes, like eyes.
Or like Japanese, like anime kind of,
yes.
Those big dark eyes. She's
so
incredible.
I don't know if you know this, but she won the Tony for her role in the Broadway musical Once.
Oh, wow.
She played the lead in that. And she was also a regular during the final season of How I Met Your Mother. And that's the way a lot of people know her. But boy, she is so good. I can't wait to see where the show goes. If you're not watching it, Penguin is, I don't know if it's Penguin or The Penguin.
The Penguin.
Just The Penguin is now streaming on HBO Max. You should definitely check that out. 2 episodes are out there right now. All right, here we go. Our guests today are producers Nina Jacobson and Stuart Zicherman. She has produced the Hunger Games series, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid franchise, Crazy Rich Asians, and on television, both Clipped and The People vs. O.J. Simpson. He is a showrunner, writer, director, and producer on two shows that I love, both The Americans and The Affair. He also directed the great indie comedy ACOD. They have combined talents for American Sports Story, Aaron Hernandez on FX, and streaming on Hulu. Nina, Stuart, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Love the show. It is, I'm work for ESPN. I've covered the NFL for a long time. I know the story of Aaron Hernandez, but I don't think I ever knew everything about the story of Aaron Hernandez. And talk about your source material. Maybe Nina, you first. Talk about your source material for this, because I've never listened to this podcast. I went and listened to it, the Gladiator podcast. Tell me about how you found it and why this was the right story for you guys to tell.
Well, I also, I knew who Aaron Hernandez was, when he played and when he died, but I didn't know very much about him. And what I did know was so oversimplified. And what I was like, oh, he was a thuggy guy who was a gifted player and got himself committed terrible crimes, got caught and killed himself. That's what I knew about him.
Yeah.
And so this podcast, when it first, the first time that I heard it and read the material, kept coming to us through Wondery and a relationship with them that the studio had actually as well. Nick Grad and at FX, because of the ESPN, relationship and all, they were paying close attention to it. And when I listened to the podcast and read the Spotlight articles, I realized how much I didn't know, how really two-dimensional at best my ideas of what I thought I understood were, how much more this story reflected on both the institution of football sort of through American life as like both a dream and an aspiration and like the greatest wish fulfillment imaginable to play for your hometown team for so many boys. And then to see the dark side of it, these moments at which his on the field violence is so impressive that his off the field violence is overlooked, excused, erased, and unanswered. And so ended up having so many dimensions, say both about the institution of football and the sort of moments of inflection where things might have gone a different way for him and his victims. But also, he was so much more tragic than I had realized. I did not know anything about, sort of his struggle to maintain this sort of face of like hypermasculinity and his fears of being discovered as someone who, slept with women and men, and how terrified he was to be found out. How I didn't know, there was so much about him that I didn't know. And it felt that for us, we are drawn to these stories that you think but that there's so much more to them. But that when you look at that story, you're also looking at a mirror at the culture. And there is so much about Aaron's story that is sort of singularly American and singularly American because of our love for this sport.
Mm-hmm.
I really marvel at the idea of somebody being terrified of being caught, yet he put himself in situations where he could have gotten caught so many times. And what do you attribute that to? That he would take these risks, because he was somebody who got a lot of free passes, so was it the feeling of just being untouchable? I do think he got a lot of free passes. And so he didn't ever really get consequences for what happened, right? From the beginning, as soon as he gets in trouble in Florida, he's gotten out of trouble. The machine steps in to protect him. But it was also, I think, that, even the way he played, that was something I was very struck by. If you watch him, every time you think he's going to go down, he slips
the tackle. He slips out. He is like uncatchable. He's so used to being in harm's way and somehow coming out with the ball or, and with the touchdown. That he's so used to getting away from whoever's chasing him. And I don't think he knows how to not be chased in a way. And also, I think that, at a certain point, his judgment is completely off,
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
at
By the same token, you have when you say that he spent so much time in the spotlight and he seeked it out, but he also was born into it. He was born into a body that from the time he was so big, and he was always the star of every team, and he was sort of destined to be a football player, and there was never an option for anything else. And even, I'm a big football fan. I grew up in the Northeast. I live in the Northeast. I didn't know how big of a football star he was. He really was. He was, University of Florida does not recruit in the Northeast very much. Like they came to Bristol to get him, and so, I think he lived in this spotlight for so much of his life. And had so much pressure on him to be a star that I think that made him feel even more trapped.
Yeah, it's that idea of I don't want to screw this up. His dad told him, you're going to be great. You're going to play on Sundays. You're going to be a star. And he's trying to not screw up. And in particular, you mentioned the sexuality. I mean, I work in sports, and for a long time, I was in the closet, and I was terrified that somebody would find out. So I really identify with that particular feeling that he had in that show. You know what I'm saying, Stu?
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. Once, that's something that we try, we don't want to excuse him. We're not asking people to feel sorry for him. Like the victims in this story are clearly like the people whose lives were destroyed by him.
Yeah.
And yet, we try, even without sort of flinching on accountability, to put yourself in the shoes of that person. And I think that terror of thinking that you will be outed in a place where there is no space for you, once it's found out, it is terrifying. There is no room. There's no place for him to be his authentic self. There's no space where he could absolutely not hide. So even if he wasn't seeking the limelight, there was also really no life he could envision where he wouldn't be hiding somehow.
We talked. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we talked a lot also about the pressure of secrets. I mean, he had so many secrets, and that just wears a person down, and that was one secret, certainly, but then there were others, that just sort of, and the sort of like the building up of all the secrets and the pressure and the drug use to sort of like, to soothe his anxieties, and then you mix it up with the brain injury and all. Like it's a perfect stew of unfortunate circumstance.
So there was the podcast, and there's been like maybe a few documentaries that have been done on him. And so in taking on this project, what were you guys hoping to bring to it that we hadn't seen before?
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons you do a project like this is, any kind of print journalism, podcast, any kind of documentary, all they can do is sort of speculate. They can only show you what they could see, or what they could find. I think what was the challenge here and the real fun of doing this was connecting the dots. We can go into the rooms where no one has been, so like, they can speculate. You read in the Globe piece, about how Aaron went to. I didn't know that Aaron had gone to the scouting combine to ask Belichick for a trade. That's crazy.
Yeah.
My first thought is like, well, wow, it'd be fun to write that scene. There's all these scenes that you get excited to write that no one has ever been privy to. The challenge of that is you have to make certain decisions, and we as a group made certain decisions about. The answers to certain things in this story, because this is a particular story that had very few answers. The why of everything was not apparent, So again, in all the documentaries, they're speculating about like, why did Aaron kill Odin Lloyd? but we had to sort of make a decision for us about why we thought it happened, and then connect the dots and show it.
Stu, you mentioned the writing room. You even had a former NFL star on your writing staff, right? A friend of mine, Dominic Foxworth, was working with you. Was there ever a moment where, I'm curious because, he's an NFL guy. Was there ever a moment where he said, nah, that's not how it goes down with an NFL player. That's not the way it is?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why he was there. One of the reasons he was there, he, really wanted somebody that could bring an authenticity to both the college and pro football. And Nick, played at University of Maryland. He played in the pros. He'd been in locker rooms, and we, when you approach writing something like this, you talk about a lot of big themes, like toxic masculinity and violence and things like that. But I really did not want to embellish it. I really wanted it to be real. Dominique, came to us with that story about, what was it? What was it called?
Go chicken.
Gay chicken.
Never forget it.
Yeah.
Never forget it.
He said, yeah, no, I mean, people play gay chicken in the locker room. And I was like, oh, we got to put that in the show, things like that, which I think is in episode 2. So yeah, I think that
we wanted to understand what, we wanted to take people behind the curtain. We wanted to understand what it was like behind the curtain. And the only people who know are the people who've been behind the curtain. And we hadn't been. So that was a perspective that we really wanted to understand, particularly, yes, like the locker room culture, the pressure, the culture of the job when you step into the Patriots, that you really go from playing a game to doing a job.
The draft process too, right?
The draft process.
The episode we're looking at this week, right? The combine, and Dominique told us, oh my God, the questions they ask you, and then that about they dig into your life, and so he did. He brought a lot of authenticity to the show that, that we just didn't want to have to make up.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have any contact with family members or former players to give you insight on things that happened when they were the only ones in the room who could tell you what the conversations were?
No, basically, in all of the, things that we've done that are based on true events, we rely on reporting, interviews, transcripts from court cases. We do, every bit of, reporting there has been, but we tend not to work with the people whose stories it is, because the only time we did that was with Monica Lewinsky, because, at the time of her story, she was not able to speak. So the idea of her not having a voice in this telling was, impossible to imagine in that particular case. But generally, in a story, you're trying to get, it is an empathy machine. Long form storytelling is an empathy machine. And you're trying to, let's say, have empathy or walk in the shoes of all of the characters, no matter how flawed and no matter how much you might loathe their actions, you want to still come to their humanity with some empathy. And once you are aligned with one person's version of the story, you'll have feelings about that. And you'll feel like I have to tell their version of the story, or I don't want to feel disloyal to them by telling it this way, or any of that. And so, sometimes there'll be, actors might, in some cases, later on get to know a person they played. Sarah Paulson became friendly with Marcia Clark, but well after Marcia Clark had even seen the show, because it's weird. It's a very weird relationship, and it can be hard to know the right way. Even if you don't like the person, then you feel like, is that filtering into the way that we're portraying them? And so getting this sort of dimensional third person perspective has been our approach.
Yeah, I was going to say, also we don't know that much about a lot of these people. Aaron's gone, we just know there's a lot of great research to sort of build off of, but then there's other characters, that everyone knows, right? There's for us, we talked a lot about how we portray Bill Belichick, for example.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Right. Because, when I sat down to write Bill Belichick dialogue. Like, what do you write? He gives you nothing. There's nothing there. Like, in a way, you have to sort of reinvent the character a little bit and figure out, like, and Brad and Nina were always reminding me that this is, we're not, this is not a documentary. We are.
Right. It's not an impersonation.
It's not an impersonation. So it's like, you have to find a way to sort of bring these characters to life in a way that is going to make them watchable, entertaining, and also like to give them an arc and to give them a story. And at times you're playing around with it.
Nina, you've done, let's see, People versus O.J. Simpson and Assassination of Johnny Versace and Clipped, we talked about with my friend Ramona Shelburne. You know how tough it can be to find the right actors. So when you set out to cast this, how concerned were you about finding an actor who both resembles, has his physical stature, and also the chops to take on the role?
Well, of course, they're really hard to cast for all the reasons you would imagine. And, the chops comes first because you have to be able to sort of channel the essence of the person. And, if you're trying, like, say, sort of for an impersonation, you're always going to end up with this kind of an artifact. And so, with Josh, yes, we knew we had to have somebody who had the range, who could both have that, like, goofy sweetness that people who knew Aaron, he always was described in very similar ways by people who knew him as a younger man, like really, like, say, warm, polite, respectful to adults, and a goofball, somebody who could run around, play with your kids for hours, at a barbecue, and do people trusted completely to do that, and so you had to capture that side. And then as he becomes, like, darker and more tortured, more burdened, more concussed, more trapped, to be able to take the character to the depths that make a person make terrible, terrible, tragic, criminal, immoral decisions, and to destroy his own life, to destroy the life of the people he killed, and their families, his own family, his own daughter, and his fiance, who clearly, they loved each other, and yet he still destroyed so much. And so to have an actor who could capture all of that, and then who also had the physical ability to build himself up as much as he could, we were fortunate that, he was that Aaron was not, like, the tallest basketball player, which is really hard when you're also trying to cast people who are like 6'9" or so. Thankfully, we didn't have to deal with, crazy height. I think Aaron was 6'1", so he, it was more about that kind of lean, ferocious, intimidating physique in a body that felt too young to be that, right? Because that was part of, knowing that we were going to have the same actor play him in high school as, as in his 20s. That was a real challenge. And, we had a bit of a head start in knowing how talented Josh was, because he was cast as, a critical third lead role in the prequel to the Hunger Games that Brad Simpson and I produced. And, so we were actually, I was on set with him when he was, readying his video audition for this. And then we wrapped, and he got called back for an audition with Ryan and got the part. But I was rooting for him, but I also really wanted to let the machine and the Ryan's taste and casting, I wanted to have, like, a double blind, so we tried to sort of let him float up on his own, even though I knew how good he was. And, sure enough, he made it into that last group and then came in and took the part with Ryan.
So I think a lot of guys, sorry.
Go ahead, Stu.
No, I was going to say, I think a lot of guys came in to read, and I think, like, the instinct is to play the darkness. It was like the brooding darkness. And as Nina said, that, Josh has all the other parts of it. He can do the darkness, but he has all the other parts of it. And I think that people forget the story. It's like, it is so dark, but it has moments of real levity and lightness, Aaron, and wish fulfillment, we're inviting you into the locker rooms where you've always wanted to be. And you're there when he gets a $40 million contract, and you're there with, like, we want, we need an actor that could play all of it, and he could.
So aside from getting out the story about Aaron and the personal stuff of growing up and all of that, the things that a lot of people didn't know, we're all sports fans. I'm a football fan. I wanted to talk to you about the CTE aspect of it and how much you think that had an effect on him later on with what he did. But also, was it a goal? Was it a goal at all to maybe bring this aspect to light, especially what's going on with Tua? I always
Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa, and the fact that he had 4 concussions, 1 in college, 3 in the pros, and he still wants to play. And what can the NFL do? I mean, they can't have an intervention, right? I mean, they can't. Can they tell a player that they just can't play anymore because they're really in jeopardy of really damaging themselves to the point where they could die? Or you think the players that commit suicide because of it? What was that ever a thought of what you wanted to bring to this as well, for like a reason to maybe change what's going on, or just put that to light?
But I definitely think we wanted to make sure it was a conversation people were having and watching the show. There's no separating out. You can't assign a correlation, directly to, CTE equals murderer, and nor do we want to, nor do we want to simplify his story or anybody's story in that way. However, you cannot talk about this story without talking about the fact that by the time of his death, his brain is brittled. It is half the weight of what a human brain ought to weigh. And of course, as you read, there was that heart-wrenching article that was just written about the players from SC, the linemen.
Oh, yeah.
SC, and them talking about the changes in behavior, the way marriages fail, the way alcohol and drug abuse or food or obesity introduced itself. It's like the erosion of impulse control, the change in personalities, the paranoia, the relationships, going up in flames, and watching these people who are living it gradually in this group of friends and seeing what they're describing and what their marriages went through. It was so reminiscent of some of the stories, that we'd heard about, certainly Aaron and his, implosion, and what often happens, and was, I think, one of the most important things to us too, is that what happens when something awful happens, like what happened with Aaron, is not that we've talked about it for a long time. It gets erased, quickly erased, onto the next star, the next story, the next dream, the next aspiration. There's always another game. There's always another amazing piece of game footage. Just how quickly can we erase this part? And so we definitely wanted to, unerase that part of the story, and make sure that people are having their own conversations about it, because it's immensely complex. It's driven by, like say, an appetite that we all have for a sport that we love to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I got a friend who played in the league who now has dementia and really struggles in communicating. And I always wonder. There's a split here. We love football. It is like religion, and somehow we collectively ignore what guys are doing to their brains, and we sort of put that out of mind.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's so disturbing is that they use safety helmets in the preseason, right? Is it the preseason? Right? Yeah. So they're not attractive. They're not sexy, but they are safer than the helmets that they use during the game. And, this is kind of a weird analogy about it not being attractive and sexy. But as a woman, I've seen my share of ugly bridesmaid dresses. You know what I mean?
Right.
But but you wear them because that's what they chose to win. And you gotta do it. It's not a matter of whether they're pretty or not. And because there's been so many instances of players that have died because of it, what is it going to take for the NFL?
I mean, they just don't. I mean, at the end of the day, and I think you asked the right question before, like, what can the NFL do? And the answer is, I mean, very little. I mean, because it's so successful. I mean, it's the most successful sport in the country. It now takes up, 4 nights a week, and it's like, it's not going anywhere. And I think that, whether it's the brain injury stuff, whether it's the turf stuff, where guys are blowing out their Achilles on certain fields. In New York, we have the field where like people keep blowing out their Achilles and they don't change the field. They don't change the turf. Whether it's playing on a Thursday night and then playing again like 5 days later, almost, whatever it is, it's like they really don't care. I mean, it's a business, and I think that I was really struck. I'm a big football fan and I love the game, and the original title of the articles and the podcast was Gladiator, and we do have this sort of gladiatorial relationship with the game. We love it. Like, and I'd forgotten, I mean, going into this world in such depth, like you stand on a practice field and the coaches are yelling, kill him, hit him harder. Like they use violent terminology to play a violent game, and then the second you walk off the field, you do anything violent, like how you just turn it off, and the second you do anything violent, we build these people up, we build guys like Hernandez up, we buy their jerseys and we yell their names, we take our kids to see them on side, like, and then they do something awful, and we're just like, don't talk about him anymore, and get rid of that jersey and buy another number. It just keeps going.
Yeah,
and it's kind of tragic. And listen, like I gave my whole day to it yesterday. The whole day. I love it. I love watching it.
So a couple of pieces. Go ahead.
I think about this a lot as the mom of 2 boys. One of them played a little bit of flag football, but neither one of them thankfully ever really took to it. But I think about this a lot with my boys too, which is just that, I read reason I read a lot of nonfiction. I tend to often like books that are set in a time when like we all did things, it wasn't maybe that great for us women, and a lot of the things that we got to do weren't that interesting a lot of the time. But there was, when you think about a time that people either thought that they were fighting for king or country or for their religion or for their farm or for, their family, or they were building things, building cities, there was a time that people with that sort of exercise in like kind of superhuman ability was something that people might be able to aspire to in some way for themselves. I'm going to go out and say there was a lot more that people do to demonstrate those kind of like visible heroic qualities in a way. And especially if these are your gifts, these physical gifts, and you see the machine, the show is about the machine that takes a lot of people who have these gifts and gives them both incredible opportunity and incredible pain, and potentially a very, very troubled future if they get their head knocked around enough. But it is also like the delivery of a dream and of an aspiration to transcend your circumstances to become like a Viking, a gladiator, a kind of a hero that I think culturally still have this desire for this sort of Superman type of thing. And that's who they seem like. They do things we can't imagine.
One note on casting. Tony Yazbek, who plays Urban Meyer. Now, I've been around Urban Meyer. That might as well have been Urban Meyer. Like, that is like absolutely on the money what he did there. That was fantastic casting. And I thought Patrick Schwarzenegger was great as Tim Tebow. Like, he had that sort of glow like Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, by the way, if you meet him, you shake his hand, you just know that's a good guy. Like, that's a good, he's just that's the way, and I thought Patrick Schwarzenegger found a way to capture that for the show as well. So brilliant casting, I thought, on both those parts.
Thank you. We wanted his face to be deeply felt and to be something that was clearly like, we don't want that to feel like a bit, you know,
No.
and that's something that really brought to it.
Yeah, no, it was totally authentic, and he was very charming too, I thought.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a couple of last questions, one for each of you. So, Stuart, you worked on a show called The Affair, which I think is like one of the great shows of the last decade. Absolutely love that show. You worked with a really great showrunner, Sarah Treem, on that. I'm wondering, from that show and from working with her, how did you learn to become a showrunner, and what did you take from that show?
Well, I mean, you take a little something from every show because, you spend so much time in a writer's room with the showrunner and you're pitching ideas and then the things that stick and how they stick. And then, it all kind of goes off and the showrunner kind of takes it and all of a sudden you go to set and it's all alive, and Sarah Treem, first and foremost, is a great writer, a really great writer. She's a beautiful writer. And I always felt like, from her, I really learned that it's super important to go to set with a great script, and I will work a script over and over and over.
Yes, you will.
Yeah. It's super important to go. You don't want to leave things, dangling when you get to set. That doesn't mean they don't change. I love when you get to set and you rehearse it and you start changing things right there. But it's really important that the script is really sound when you go to production.
Nina, for you, you've produced, The Hunger Games and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. All the movies you've done. What made this story, the Aaron Hernandez story, a limited series as opposed to a movie?
Well, I would say, that anytime you have, kind of a journey of this nature, that you're trying to follow a character really through these different chapters in his life. And as we say, there was throughout this show, we sort of wanted to ask ourselves this question of like, who killed Aaron Hernandez? And to look at all of these sort of moments and paths, moments along the way where something might have gone differently, whether it was not leaving high school when he was still really not ready to leave high school. He was still in his senior year. He hadn't graduated. He had just lost his father. His principal knew that he shouldn't go, but the decision was made, really for him, not by him in any way, that he should go to school far sooner than he should have gone. The decision for him not to face any consequences when he got in trouble in Florida. The choice to, when he wanted to try to grow up a bit in college and stay another year until nope, time to go pro. Not you're going to have any consequences, but just go pro.
Right.
That's the answer. It is go make some money. And so, again, what if he hadn't played in New England? What if he hadn't gone back to Bristol? What if he had been traded? Like all of these sort of moments along the way. And to get those kinds of details and to be able to sort of both have the characters who are with him throughout his adult life, the women particularly in his life who are in his life throughout his adult life, who you'll see more and more of as the series goes on, from Shayana and, his cousin Danya and his mom Terry and his brother, and to see those and clock those relationships over time. It's the kind of thing that's much better suited, honestly, to long form than a biopic, where really oftentimes you try to pick a time to tell a person's story,
right.
And go deep into one time as opposed to trying to cover so much ground.
What's funny too is that they originally this was 8 episodes, and I remember Brad and Nina were shooting in Atlanta. I went down to Atlanta with I think this has to be 10. We had so much we wanted to do and so much we wanted to say, and so many things we wanted to talk about and subject matters and parts of his life and not have to sort of jam it all into the And I think as the show goes now, and we get into the latter part of the season, I think you'll see it it breathes a bit more,
Yeah,
And it-
yeah.
yeah.
And the network, when you said we want to do 2 more, were they like, did you have to convince them, or they were like, oh, absolutely?
No, they were happy to do 10. It's really about like, do you have, we wanted to have like disciplined, shorter episodes that are like not boring, keep you watching, that like you wish there were more. Yeah, shootable. And that you finish it wishing there was another one, not being like, still. So we wanted to keep the episodes really lean and have, but make sure we told, the story and as fully as we could.
Well, I absolutely love the show. I'm excited, by the way, that it's a limited series because I get a new chapter every single week, and I can't wait to watch the rest of it. The show is American Sports Story, Aaron Hernandez. It's now here airing on FX, and you can catch it also on Hulu. Nina, Stuart, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
There you go. Thanks to Nina. Thanks to Stuart for joining us. Appreciate that. The show's great. And that one question I asked has no answer, which is we watch it all the time. We love it. We live it. And we don't really pay attention. We know, but we don't really pay attention to CTE and the brain injuries. It's like we all have a case of willful ignorance.
Right. But, the point that I brought up, I don't understand how you can have these safety helmets
right
in the preseason and they know that they're better and that I don't know. Have they proven?
Oh, yeah,
that?
yeah. No, these are called Guardian caps.
Okay,
and players are starting to wear them in games. Like Kevin Dotson, who's an offensive lineman for the Rams, wearing a Guardian cap. So you're starting to see them. They don't look cool, but they don't look terrible. I can't imagine.
They don't look terrible.
Why would you not wear it if you can add a layer of protection? Why would you not? If Tua Tagovailoa was wearing a Guardian cap, he might not have a concussion right now. I don't know, but might not.
Look, you go back years to how much safety has been incorporated into professional sports, like baseball players didn't have the grid, on their mask.
Right.
And
sure.
you think of hockey players who were grandfathered, they didn't wear helmets during games. And so when they finally came into being, there were players that were playing opposite players that weren't wearing the helmet. So, and the thing that Stuart was saying, they have so much invested in these players and it does have that gladiator, feel to it. But it seems like such a contradiction because if they are your bread and butter, wouldn't you do everything you could possibly do to protect them?
Well, here's the problem. The symptoms are years down the road. Like you're protecting your asset for now. You don't really care about what their life looks like in 20 years.
That's such a horrible thing to say.
It's a horrible thing to say, and it is the reality.
It's the reality, but it's just the fact that, someone could even admit to that is just horrific to me.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, the show is great.
It is.
Aaron Hernandez, American Sports Story. Check it out, FX and on Hulu. Sue, it is great seeing you, and we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.